Well, hi, friends, and welcome to NC Family's weekly update for the week ending Friday, November 22nd. Well, Jerry, the North Carolina General Assembly was in Raleigh this week for a very rare November session, and state lawmakers took action on several bills. For months, friends, we've been talking about North Carolina's Opportunity Scholarship School Choice Program in a bill, House Bill 10, that the General Assembly passed back in mid-September to provide more funding for the program. Now, this was designed to address a waiting list of approximately 55,000 students and families who had applied for opportunity scholarships after the General Assembly expanded the program and provided additional funding, but they just simply did not count on the demand that was going to come after that. They made the program universal and open to all families in the state. And so there became this massive waiting list. And the funds did not exist in the state budget to meet that waiting list. And so House Bill 10 was designed to provide more funding, not only in the current school year, but in future school years, to provide an opportunity for families all across North Carolina at all income levels to take advantage of this very important school choice program. Well, of course, Governor Roy Cooper, who has been a longtime opponent of opportunity scholarships, vetoed the bill soon after it was passed by the General Assembly. And the legislature finally, this week, came back into session and overrode the governor's veto, both in the State House and the State Senate. So we were really excited to see this take place. There are, again, thousands of families, tens of thousands of families across North Carolina who had applied for opportunity scholarships, who now have an opportunity to take advantage of this very valuable school choice program.
And it's going to be, compared to prior enrollment, more than double the number of students now who will not only be able to apply, but receive the scholarships. And then part of what they did as well, John, is forward funded, which they already had in law, but they've added additional funding for each of those years up to 2032, 33.
Yeah.
So it's a significant move, not just for the upcoming school year, but on into the future.
Years in advance. And yes, and the amount of funds that they provided should, we don't know for sure until it happens, but hopefully will cover the demand in future years. And so, again, that's really exciting to see. We've been a very strong advocate for North Carolina's Opportunity Scholarship Program, have worked in cooperation with a number of other organizations on the state level and the national level that have come into North Carolina, but a number of other organizations like Parents for Educational Freedom in North Carolina, who's really been spearheading a lot of the school choice initiatives, and especially the Opportunity Scholarship Program here. So we're just really excited to see the legislature take this action to override the governor's veto and enact this additional funding into law.
And it has, of course, been unfortunate and somewhat frustrating. There's been a delay in having this happen. But obviously, the legislature, the last two times they've been back in town, the focus has been on the hurricane disaster relief.
Well, and Jerry, speaking of hurricane disaster relief, that was another bill that the General Assembly took up, was a third disaster relief bill to aid Western North Carolina following, of course, the devastation from Hurricane Helene. Tell us a little bit about that. Now, this bill did have components of funding for disaster relief, but it also contained, I think it was a 130-something page bill that contained a variety of other provisions in it. We're not going to go into depth about those things, but Jerry, tell us, kind of hit some of the highlights of some of the things that this bill did.
As you say, John, in that many pages, there are a lot of provisions affecting a lot of our state government. And then some people were troubled about that, but it's a time. The legislature, we hope and pray, these are important changes, long-term, that hopefully will be good changes. One of them, the significant one, there's been a lot of debate in recent time about the State Board of Elections, the makeup of that, should it be nonpartisan? And what they've interestingly done up to this point, the appointments have been by the governor.
Right.
And what happened in that legislation was, of course, it was passed this week by the House and the Senate, obviously likely to be vetoed. They're coming back in December first week in December.
December the 2nd.
Right.
Yep.
To vote on that, probably on that veto override. But that now has been moved to the state auditor. So that's a significant change in how the Board of Elections. And again, we don't want to get too much in these because these are issues that I think all of them are important. These are some that are of interest to us and I think to you all as well. We know elections obviously impact everybody. So this is going to be a significant change in how that's handled.
And you've probably been hearing about these,
Yeah.
the debate and discussions over these issues in the news and so forth. And we felt that it was important to certainly acknowledge what's going on here and provide a little bit of information. There will be a link to, well, House Bill 10, which will include the override vote, so you can see how members of the legislature voted on the override, the veto override on that, and also on Senate Bill 382, which is the bill that Jerry is discussing now. There'll be links to that below the video.
Right. Final quick note on that. I know initially they wanted to change it so it was even number, Republicans and Democrats. It's now still going to be an odd number. But long term now, the decision is going to be made by the state auditor instead of the governor as far as those appointments. They also made some changes in the powers and duties of the Attorney General and the head of the Department of Public Instruction. Those, again, not to get into the details, but these are some changes that were made that they thought, looking ahead, looking at what has happened, things that they saw needed to be done. On the court side of the picture, they have changed as far as the appointments to vacancies for the Court of Appeals, Supreme Court. Up to this point, I mean, the governor makes those appointments, and the governor's been free to make those regardless of party affiliation. Right. Under this law, the appointment will have to be from the same party of the judge who's vacating that position. So that's going to be a change as well.
And that's how like state legislative seats are filled. If there's a vacancy, then it's the local party that makes a nomination or a recommendation to the governor, and the governor then approves that, but it's essentially a rubber stamp.
Right.
Yeah, but within the same party.
So again, it's something that seems to make sense, but there was a lot of debate on a lot of these provisions yesterday. One other quick one on the judicial level. Right now, 2 of the Superior Court positions in North Carolina, one in Wake County, one in Forsyth, those positions have been eliminated. They're now creating 2 special Superior Court judges. One would be appointed or nominated by the President Pro Tem of the Senate, one by the Speaker of the House. So again, various changes through, like you say, John, 131 pages. Just to point out, when these things happen, it is people going, were they doing it because of the outcome of the election? Is this a partisan move? My mind went back to when a Republican lieutenant governor was elected about over 30 years ago for the first time in that century. And a lot of the powers and duties of the lieutenant governor changed then. Hopefully that was based on not partisanship, but on what should be the role of the lieutenant governor. So these are always interesting times where you hear a lot of strong debate. But overall, as always, we all pray that what's happening is what will make government better.
Yeah. Jerry, you're being very diplomatic, but it is interesting. I think there are, as a result of the elections and what took place and, opportunities that exist at this time, there were a number, again, of provisions that were added to this bill. So we'll see how that all shakes out. In the end, the governor, of course, Governor Roy Cooper is expected to veto the bill. And then the legislature, again, presumably would reconvene December the 2nd for a session to potentially override or consider overriding the governor's veto of that bill. Yeah.
One thing, too, I want to mention, John, because some of the debate and discussion this week was on the hurricane relief. Everybody, you're just overwhelmed in thinking about what has happened, what it's going to take for years and years for recovery. And they're kind of going, why isn't the legislature doing more? Well, one of the budget chairs spoke yesterday. The estimates now, and who knows what they are, over $50 billion. Well, the state doesn't have that kind of money. You kind of can tend to think, well, why don't they just write a check for whatever they can, the rainy day fund, everything they've got. They said they've got to be responsible about how we're trying to respond to this. We want to help, and the legislators want to help, but they're also realizing, as he said yesterday in that debate, this budget leader, he said the only people who have $50 billion are would be the federal government.
Well,
And that's where,
that's actually taxpayer money
that's
that
right.
comes out of
It's not
taxpayers' pockets. So they
Yeah.
need to be diligent and
right.
considerate of how they're going about doing this. And it
Yeah.
seems that they are. They're not dumping. The state going into this had about a $4 billion rainy day fund that the state had built up over years, and they are trying to be deliberate and thoughtful and smart about how they go about dispersing those funds to address immediate needs, things that can be done now. But they've also had experiences in other disaster situations in North Carolina where the relief efforts have gone on for years and years and years. And there are people still in Eastern North Carolina without homes, 6-8 years after hurricane damage there. So they want to be, again, deliberate about what they're doing. And it seems that they are doing so with a bit of restraint, but they're also calling on the federal government to provide substantial funding because that's what it's going to need.
And not to belabor, not our area of expertise, but one thing they mentioned yesterday is being careful about the spending, because the federal match on a lot of this is, I think, 10 to 1. So, but apparently if they get out ahead of the federal government, you don't get the match. So again, this is a huge challenge for our legislature. And I think they were very clear that they are working very hard on this, almost on a daily basis, getting requests, processing these, trying to figure out what is it we can do. And final note, John, I think some of what they did even this week goes back to prior hurricanes and still trying to address those needs.
True. Well, that's Senate Bill 382. Again, link for that bill if you're interested in learning more, reading 130 plus pages. That'll be linked below the video. Finally, we do want to mention on the election front that, of course, the 2024 general election took place on November 5th, a couple of weeks ago, plus some time. But there are still some races that have yet to be called. One of those is a statewide race for a seat on the North Carolina Supreme Court between appointed Democrat Justice Allison Riggs and Republican Court of Appeals Judge Jefferson Griffin. At the time of our filming of this video, Democrat Allison Riggs was leading by a super slim margin of only 722 votes. And Jerry, that's out of over 5.5 million votes that were cast. So 722 votes separates this election right now. North Carolina is going currently through a county-by-county recount, a statewide recount for specifically this race. And they're supposed to be done with that recount next Wednesday. And so hopefully by that time, we will know the outcome of this race. There are also several state legislative races that are likely to see recounts. In particular, 2 in the state Senate and 1 in the state House that are separated by only a couple of hundred votes each. One of those is in Wake and Granville counties. Terrence Everett, and this is for State Senate District 18. Terrence Everett, who's currently a state House member running for the state Senate, is the Democrat facing Ashley Adams, a Republican challenger. And then there was a Libertarian in this race as well. There were over 123,000 votes cast in this race, and the margin right now, Terrence Everett, the Democrat, leads by only 134 votes. So a really, really slim margin there. There's one other close race in the state Senate. There's also a very close race in the state House, State House District 32, which is Granville and Vance counties. Democrat Brian Cohn is leading incumbent Republican Frank Sossaman by 233 votes in this race. And this race is particularly important because if there is a recount, and if in that recount Frank Sossaman, the incumbent Republican, happens to eke out a win, then that will give the House Republican caucus in the state House a veto-proof supermajority, the 72 votes that they need. They currently have 71, and so they're 1 seat short. So if there is a recount in each of these races, they could have an impact on what the margins look like. and especially the supermajority in the House looks like for the upcoming legislative session that'll begin in 2025.
And one other note on that, John, I know you mentioned as far as kind of what we think is going to be the deadline when there'll be a final count. I think in a couple of these races, there's also some other challenges in addition to the recount. One of them actually a court challenge. I guess some of those things could extend the final outcome even beyond that date, depending on, how those challenges are being processed. So they're obviously, it gets back to the whole point where every vote counts, and there are things that happen in the actual count that could, as you say, John, could change the outcome from what it currently appears to be in some of these races.
Well, and it's been interesting since election day and election night, and then the next day when we're watching and clicking refresh on our computers to get the updated vote counts for a lot of these races. And the day after the election, Jefferson Griffin in the state Supreme Court race was up by like 10,000 votes. And then they started doing counting the absentee ballots, if those had not been factored in already, and then provisional ballots. And then his margin shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And then when the county's boards of elections were submitting their certified results just a few days ago, after they did their counts, and Wake County reported in, Allison Riggs was now leading in that state Supreme Court race. So this is kind of a natural process, but it also is something that highlights the fact that we need to ensure election integrity in North Carolina. And yes, that all votes are counted, but all legitimate and legal votes are counted, not those that are not legitimate or illegal. And so that's part of what the certification process and the recount process is all about. So we're continuing to be in prayer that the process works well and that the true winner in these elections will be the one who is victorious.
Okay.
Yep. Well, friends, that's about all that we've got for this week, except to say, as we always do, thank you for your continued support, for your prayers, for your involvement. And the North Carolina Family Policy Council wants to wish you and your families a heartfelt, happy Thanksgiving. We pray that you have next week just a wonderful time with family and friends, celebrating and being thankful for all that the Lord has blessed us with. We're thankful for you and for your support and just equipping us to be able to do the job that we do down in the state legislature and elsewhere. So again, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. God bless you, and we look forward to seeing you. We probably won't be doing a video next week because of the Thanksgiving holiday, but we'll certainly be back the following week. So until that time, thanks again so much. Happy Thanksgiving.